All disappointments come from excessive expectations. That's how Putin responded to Trump's words. For the first time, the Russian dictator commented on the American president's ultimatum, and he did so during a meeting with Lukashenko. In particular, Putin stated that the Kremlin's position has not changed since last year's ultimatum, which called for Ukraine to renounce NATO membership and recognize Moscow's territorial claims. If Kyiv believes that now is not the time for negotiations, Moscow, they say, is ready to wait. The Kremlin dictator named, and I quote, eliminating the causes of the crisis in Ukraine as the main goal of his war. He claimed that among Russian fighters, there have been no pointless losses. And he started threatening with the Orshnik, saying that the aggressor country has already put this missile into mass production. We hear statements from Russia. Yes, these statements were commented on by President Zelensky. Ukraine once again confirms its readiness for a meeting at the leaders' level at any time, the head of state emphasized. And he proposes to move from exchanging statements and technical level meetings to conversations at the leaders' level. Deploy 2 nuclear submarines. After an argument with the deputy head of Russia's Security Council, Medvedev, Donald Trump gave the order. The U.S. president emphasized 2 nuclear submarines are heading to the appropriate regions, without specifying which ones exactly. All this is happening against the backdrop of Medvedev's provocative statements. He, in particular, had earlier responded to Trump's ultimatum regarding measures against Russia if it does not end the war in Ukraine within 10 days. He stated, and I quote, "Every new ultimatum is a threat and a step toward war." Donald Trump hopes that Medvedev's words will not lead to unforeseen consequences. Today, the U.S. president also announced American data on Russian losses in the war against Ukraine. Just in the past month, Trump says 20,000 Russian soldiers have been killed, and since the beginning of the year, Moscow has lost more than 112,000 troops. In contrast, Ukraine has lost 8,000 soldiers since the beginning of the year, and this number, according to Trump, does not include those missing in action. The U.S. president also mentioned the losses among Ukrainian civilians during Russian strikes on our cities.
What Russia is doing is disgusting. That's how the President of the United States commented on the latest air attack on Kyiv yesterday. Answering journalists' questions, he once again confirmed that he intends to impose sanctions against Russia. Although, according to him, he is not sure how much they can actually influence Putin. The president also mentioned that Donald Trump's special representative, Stephen Witkoff, will soon visit Moscow again. Although earlier he stated that he was seriously disappointed with Putin because, as he put it, Putin is very constructive in words, but does not stop shelling Ukrainian cities. And now, joining us live from Washington is TSN correspondent Olha Koshelenko. Let's bring her into the conversation. Olha, hello? It's exactly 1 week left until the deadline that Trump set for Putin. What are people saying about this in the United States? Is it possible that Trump might change his mind? What could influence him? And what is the purpose of Witkoff's visit? Could it somehow change the situation?
Greetings, colleague. Given Donald Trump's behavior, it's unlikely that anyone can give a definite answer to this question right now. What we do know for sure is that the deadline is indeed next Friday. But at the same time, let's keep in mind that President Trump has repeatedly moved his red lines with ease. This time, it's clear that he was extremely irritated by the fact that Putin didn't immediately respond to his statements about the specific deadlines by which Trump wanted him to implement a ceasefire. Trump issued his first ultimatum of 50 days back on July 14th, then later reduced it to 10 days, but Putin remained silent throughout. This week, Secretary of State Marco Rubio let slip that there had been some contacts with the Russians on this matter, but obviously not at the highest level, and they didn't yield any results. Donald Trump even got into a war of words on social media with former Russian President Medvedev, who, in his usual manner, warned Trump that ultimatums could lead to war with Russia. And even though Medvedev is, to put it mildly, nowhere near Trump's level, Trump still decided to respond to him on Truth Social.
There are practically no joint businesses between Russia and the USA. Let it stay that way. and tell Medvedev, that loser, the former president of Russia who thinks he's still president, to watch his mouth. He's treading on dangerous ground.
After that, not only did Medvedev not stop, but today on his official Telegram channel, he responded to Trump again, calling his reaction nervous, which, according to him, proves that Russia is on the right track. And for some reason, he advised Trump to remember, I quote, his favorite movies about the Walking Dead. And Trump responded again, literally less than half an hour ago. His reply appeared on Truth Social, saying that he considers Medvedev's rhetoric to be foolish and provocative, and because of this, he ordered 2 nuclear submarines to be put on standby in the relevant region in case Medvedev's words turn out to be something more. A response also came from Putin himself. Reacting to Trump's words about being disappointed in him, he said, and I quote, "Disappointment is caused by excessive expectations." And then he continued with his usual rhetoric in full about the goals of the special military operation, the illegitimacy of the Kyiv regime, and so on. So there's no constructive approach or even a hint of a desire to end the war. And in response to journalists' questions, Trump really did call the recent shelling of Kyiv disgusting. And, for example, the daughter of Special Representative Keith Kellogg, Megan Mops, a well-known volunteer who has visited Ukraine more than once again reminded both her father and the whole world who Putin really is. Rest assured, this is Putin's response to President Trump's ultimatum, she wrote. He is once again testing American strength and resilience. And she added this. And then, on top of that, there were Russian missiles, but only after civilians had left the bomb shelters and gone back to their homes. Russia is sending a calculated message to America and the West. We are not afraid of you. However, Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff, who is currently in Gaza, will then travel to Moscow. Trump said this the day before, adding the phrase, "Believe it or not." Witkoff has been to Russia multiple times, most recently in April of this year. Each time, he met personally with Putin, had long conversations with him, brought back gifts for Trump from Putin, and later repeated Putin's rhetoric about Ukraine in interviews. The publication Politico wrote this week that the United States, as a last resort, might offer Russia some significant economic deals to get it to cease fire. So this visit is potentially dangerous, colleague.
Olya, look, this deadline is supposed to expire in a week. And Trump's main trump card, which he's talking about now, is the new major sanctions he's promising. What are they saying in Washington? What kind of sanctions could these be? Who would they affect? And what exactly would make them so unique compared to the numerous sanctions that have already been imposed on Russia by the United States, Europe, and other countries?
Actually, Trump hasn't been saying directly lately what specific sanctions there will be. The wording used is tariffs and other measures. Previously, he talked about secondary sanctions on trade with Russia. What does that mean? The Kremlin still has several major trading partners. First and foremost, these are China, India, and Brazil, which buy Russian oil and other goods, thereby filling Putin's war budget. In July, Trump promised 100% tariffs for those who trade with Russia. Essentially, it's an ultimatum: either you buy Russian oil, and then you'll face 100% additional tariffs when trading with America, or you don't buy it, and there are no tariffs. As experts say, 100% tariffs basically mean a halt to trade. They will become economically unviable, so Russia's counterparties will have to make this final choice. Are they with Russia or with America? And by the way, this week Trump has already imposed tariffs and penalties, though only 25% for India. And according to Reuters, at least the state-owned Indian companies have already started suspending oil shipments from Russia and are redirecting to other markets. However, Donald Trump himself isn't very confident in the effectiveness of the tariffs since, as he says, Putin wants to keep fighting. Still, the day before, the President of the United States once again reiterated that he intends to impose sanctions.
Yes, we are going to impose sanctions. I don't know if the sanctions bother him. They know about the sanctions. I know better than anyone about sanctions, tariffs, and all the rest. I'm not sure if it will have any effect, but we're going to do it.
It's hard to say how these sanctions will be implemented, if at all. On the one hand, we see that Trump easily imposes tariffs on any country he wants, all by himself, without needing any additional approval from other branches of government. On the other hand, there is a bill registered in Congress on this matter. And this path through Congress is longer and will allow Trump to ramp up the threats. For example, by initiating consideration of this bill in the Senate, but not imposing sanctions immediately. In short, colleague, the coming week promises to be anything but boring as we await big news. Holy moly!
Thank you for all these details. TSN correspondent in the United States, Olha Koshelenko, is on the line with the studio to discuss what the White House's reaction might be if Putin doesn't comply with Trump's deadline and doesn't end the war within the next week.